Thanks for checking out this movie review video. So this is for the 2021 film The Sadness. It's a Shudder original and it's coming to Shudder on Thursday, May 12th. So I'm putting this review out ahead of time. So for that reason, it is a no spoiler review. Also the fact that it's just a newer film. Now I had heard a lot, well not a lot, I'd heard a little bit of a rumbling about this film prior to it hitting me in the form of a screener. I read an article about it in Rue Morgue magazine, and I'd seen some people who have already seen it kind of saying stuff on social media. Nothing spoiler-wise, though, which is good. But brutality, practical effects, gore, over-the-top, ridiculous. Those are the types of things I was kind of hearing. And after watching it, yes, I would agree with all that stuff. So this film really is not going to be for everyone. But the people who this film is for, I think are going to be quite happy with it. And I will say up front, I do recommend watching it if you can stomach the stuff that's in there. I didn't really have much of a problem with that, but some people really might. Now, this one was written and directed by Rob Jabaz, who I think is an American expat living in Taiwan. It's a Taiwanese film, so the language, it's in Mandarin, but it is obviously English subtitles, so you can watch it that way. This is one of the situations, though, where if you really don't want to read subtitles, if you're really against subtitles or you really can't for some reason, like gives you migraines or something like that, like happens to my mother, you could probably just watch the film without any of the dialogue because, in my opinion, it's really more about the craziness. It's really more about the brutality and the practical effects and the gore and everything, and the story's not that great, in my opinion. So you can just watch it without reading the subtitles if you really needed to, but yeah. So quick synopsis of this film. Basically, some people may think it's kind of like a zombie film. It's like zombie film adjacent, basically. There's a lot of stuff that it kind of shares with a zombie film. So it's literally like a virus hits Taiwan and people are killing each other. So it's like kind of zombie, but they're not really zombies. This film is very much born from having gone through a pandemic, so it's something that everyone can immediately relate to because we all went through it, basically. No matter how you felt about it or how you experienced it, we all went through it to some degree. So the fact that it's covered in the film and the way it's covered in the film, everyone will kind of immediately connect to it. So for that reason, I think it's a smart way to make a film because everyone went through it. So you're kind of like broadening your audience significantly with who this kind of connects with. So yeah, so it's just basically that. I'm not going to give you any more information about it. It's really about the craziness and the events of what's going on with the film. So the beginning, the opening credits, they have a really cool looking CGI sequence that's pretty visually beautiful in my opinion of like virus stuff going on. It looks really, really nice. They don't use a lot of, or at least not that I could tell, they don't use a lot of CGI in this. Totally heavy on practical effects. So people who are the big gore hounds, people who are purists about practical effects over CGI, you're going to find a lot to enjoy with this film. It always warms my heart to see this type of stuff in a film where they're going so heavy on the practical effects. I love it. So kudos to the filmmakers for that. The situation will feel very familiar to everyone, so people will immediately be able to relate because of the whole pandemic situation. There is a bunch of kind of conspiracy theory stuff that gets thrown out kind of early, and then this kind of like, what do you believe? What do you not believe? Do you believe media? Do you believe science? You know, it's all this type of stuff. So a lot of stuff that's happening now and has happened through the pandemic is kind of baked into the narrative of what's going on with this film. It's also kind of metaphor for all the ills of society that we're going through right now, kind of being thrown out in the forefront in a very over-the-top, ridiculous, bloody manner. So horror doing what horror does, you know, that's what happens. So I like that. Horror typically has a lot of social commentary to it. It kind of holds a mirror up to society and says, this is what's wrong with you right now. These are the ills that you're struggling with right now. And this film does a bunch of that. And it feels like it's not just Taiwanese, you know, like it connects to so many countries, so many cultures, so many societies. So in that sense, it's written in a smart way, once again, to broaden its audience base, to really connect with a lot more people. So that was smart. As soon as things go south in this film, it gets nasty and disgusting from the get-go. And like I said, not everyone is going to really be able to handle this necessarily. Like, as soon as blood and guts and stuff like that starts happening, it's done in a very unflinching, vicious, and gross way. So if you can't handle how it starts, you might want to bail because it doesn't get easier to handle, in my opinion. Once again, I was totally fine with it. I've seen films like this before. I've seen a lot of films like this before, and I'm totally good with it. I would say that, you know, it's not up there with something like an Ichi the Killer or a Martyrs as far as like hard to handle. Both of which I have seen multiple times, but, well, only twice on Martyrs because I'm done now. I'm totally done. But Ichi the Killer I've seen a bunch of times. And definitely Ichi the Killer, for me, the way it's shot and the way it feels and kind of how they stick with people who are having things done to them, that is more distressing to me. That is harder to handle to me. With this, it's like things are being done to people and it's like brutal and it's gross and it's over the top and gory and everything, but it keeps moving. Like, you're not really sticking so much with the reactions of the people. It's not making you uncomfortable in that way. And that's usually what gets me more. So for me, it's easier to handle. Along the way, there are a lot of societal issues that are shown. I already talked about how it really, you know, talks about the societal ills. Like, there are segments within it, usually in more of like a down period within the film when things aren't like crazy and getting out of control and violent, where they're kind of pointing at these societal ills. So it really is easy to see what they're trying to say when they're trying to say it. Trust me, there's no holding back with the gore and brutality. And they're coming up with things that you weren't expecting. Like, what I appreciate about it is there is brutality and there are deaths in this that I haven't necessarily seen before, or it's a twist on something I've seen before, so it is kind of new. So there's a lot to enjoy. I mean, there really is, if you're into this particular type of film. When things get out of control, there's some frantic camera work that's used that actually really helps to enhance that experience of the terrible stuff going on and how chaotic and frantic everything is. So I think from a directorial standpoint, things were handled very well, especially the camera work. There's some really interesting angles that are done in this film. There's some interestingly framed shots. There are some shots that look really beautiful. And then, like I said, you know, that frantic camera work when things are getting really nuts that really enhances things. But it's not too shaky. I will say that because I have a problem with camera work that's too shaky. So it's not too shaky. About an hour into the film, there's something that's implied that's really going to turn some people off. Which is weird because this is a pretty unflinching film for the most part when it comes to the brutality and terrible things happening. So the fact that they don't show what's happening, but they imply it, which, you know, I think implying it is enough, in my opinion, which is probably why they went that direction. But I was a little bit, I don't want to say shocked. I was a little bit surprised that they didn't just go ahead and show it because of the way everything had been going for the most part. But there are some people who are going to see that, and that's going to be their breaking point where it's like, okay, I'm done with this. Once again, about an hour in. There is a scene that explains what's at play with the virus. So if you want to know where this came from, how things are, you know, how the virus is changing people, that explanation is there. It's not just kind of left up to whatever. So if you're the person who needs these answers, the answers are there. So you know, should be happy. But for me personally, I didn't really care that much. I didn't care about the story a whole lot because I didn't really think it was that great. And the other thing is the scene where a lot of this stuff is getting explained. I feel like it goes on way too long and really should have been cut down a bunch because the film, for the most part, moves pretty quick, and it's crazy. Like, you get some little segments here that's a little more downtime where you're kind of focusing on characters a little bit and a little bit of rest with the characters. But as long as they're not doing it for too long, it's good because then it just like jumps right back into the craziness and you're like, yeah, we're going. I think once you get to that moment where they're explaining everything, it gets way too long. There's way too much downtime for what you've already experienced with the film, and it just starts to kind of kill the pacing at the end of the film. So I think for me, it starts super strong. It's going really, really strong until you get to about the end, and then it really does start to trail off for me personally. and my interest really was starting to wane. I'm like, this isn't as good anymore. So not a strong finish, but I still recommend it. I still think overall a nice film. Again, directing was really nice though. Because I already talked about a lot of this. This plays to me like a metaphor for how so many people are turning against one another in societies all over the world. Yes, all over the world, in all sorts of countries, people are turning on each other, and it's online, it's in person. It's this rage that's building in some people, and I think this film is kind of created to take that, show it to audiences, and say, here's a cranked up level of this. Isn't this ridiculous? And kind of maybe make people reflect a little bit about, yeah, what's going on in society is kind of ridiculous. So hopefully people would, do their part in calming things down. We're all people. We can talk to each other. Don't need to get ridiculous online or in person. We can talk. And then watching this actually made me want to go watch a bunch of Takashi Miike films, which I actually own a bunch, because there's a bit of that style of gore. Now, one of the things I'm talking about in particular that for some reason I just love when it shows up in film, ridiculous arterial spray. There are a few scenes of like ridiculous arterial spray, and there's something about that that's just joyful to me. I think it's because it kind of adds a comedic bent to what's going on. So it's just so over the top and comedic and ridiculous to me that, I don't know, it just makes it more fun. So there is some of that in there, and it just really made me think about Miike films and how I would like to go now watch a bunch of them. Just saying. And once again, like, if you could handle Ichi the Killer, I think you can handle this. I really do. So maybe that's a good measuring stick for it. But anyways, once people do see this film, or if you've already seen this film, you can put comments down in the comments section, and we can do spoilers. Go ahead and do spoilers in the comments if you want to. So people, if you don't want any spoilers, don't read the comments yet. But go watch the film, then come back and we can talk about it. Out of 5 stars with half stars in play, I'm going to give it a very solid 3.5 star rating. I was ready to go 4 stars on this until the end happened with the pacing issues and how the story was just kind of like, meh. But 3.5 stars is quite good for the ratings I give out, so I do recommend this film. I think a lot of people would be happy about it, and I think it would be an interesting one for the last drive-in to cover. So we'll see. But do me a quick favor, hit subscribe for my channel if you haven't already. It's quick, painless, costs you no money, and it keeps me motivated. It is literally your way to say thank you to me if you like this video or any video I've ever done, because it's, something small you can do. Also hit the notification bell button. Then you'll know when I'm putting up new videos, which I'm doing 4 a week, which I think is a good amount. But regardless, I thank you for taking your time to watch this video. And until next time, keep it brutal.